Hello everybody, here we are today talking about what happens if the Pittsburgh Penguins miss the playoffs for 2 straight seasons. So before we get into that, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So the Penguins have been a very good team for a very long time. We're not going to talk a whole lot about that because we've already covered that before on our channel, or my channel, and you've probably heard it from a lot of other people over the years. However, we are going to be looking at the fact that Pittsburgh is possibly set to miss the playoffs for a second straight year for the first time in a minute. The last time that this did happen was the early-ish 2000s, stretching into the mid-2000s as the 2003-4 season, and then the 2005-6 season were part of a stretch where they didn't make the playoffs. You're probably wondering what happened to the 04-05 season. If you're new to the NHL, we had a lockout, didn't play that year. Very frustrating. I'm glad that I was super young so I didn't have to experience that. But it does go to show how much time has happened since Pittsburgh has been in this situation before. And it does spark a little bit of talk about what is going to happen for this team should they miss out on the playoffs for another year and officially do something they haven't done in 2 decades. And I know some of you are saying, well, maybe they could still make it as they have 58 points in 54 games played. However, they are 7 points back of the second wildcard spot, that being the Tampa Bay Lightning that hold that opportunity. And according to MoneyPuck.com, they have a 33.4% chance of making the playoffs. That is the Penguins, by the way. And looking at this, according to Tankathon.com, they have the 6th hardest remaining strength of schedule for the remainder of their season, 28 games. They need a lot of things to go right in that time. So we're just going to assume in this world that they don't make the playoffs and talk about some of the things that could change in this world, which I think the first thing obviously is going to be Mike Sullivan. So Mike is a 2-time Stanley Cup head coach, somebody that's seen a lot of personal success with this team, and certainly will be remembered as an impactful coach. And their history definitely will be brought back for ceremonies and all that stuff as they commemorate these previous championship sides. However, you are looking at the situation where if they miss the playoffs, is he going to get fired? That's been a talk before last season. That was a talk as well. He is under contract through the 2026-2027 season. So people would say, okay, well, maybe he's secure, but let's go down the path where I think there's 2 paths. The first path being they say, Mike, 2 years in a row, you're doing something we haven't done in a long time, and you are in charge of this team, and we are still not getting to the playoffs. You're going to get canned. Sorry for doing this. Obviously, you've done a lot for us, but we have to go a different route. That is option 1. But I think there's a little bit more of a reasonable option here, and I'm curious to see if they go down that route, which is they say, Mike, we know that this team has underperformed over the past few years. We haven't been terrible, but we haven't been great. We do also know as well, we brought in Kyle Dubas, saw some fresh faces in the front office, and this was your first season with them. They made some changes. You were working on some things, and we want to see what happens with a second season with the new faces where you would get a third go around of it. So I guess you could say third time's a charm in this category, because if you miss the playoffs for a third straight season, then you would probably hear people be more like, well, he's had 3 chances here. He has not been able to get the job done, so now would be a good time to move on from him. I don't know, the contract makes things interesting, but we've seen before that teams are not opposed to getting rid of coaches, even though they're on a contract for multiple seasons. As for some potential other changes, I do think that you're going to see some individuals probably leave, and maybe they don't extend an offer to them. Looking at a guy like Jeff Carter, who is a little bit older and is on the final year of his contract, I very well think that they could say, we're not going to pay you again to come back. I think he's getting a little over $3 million a season. With him being a free agent and with his age and this team trying to figure out how to take a step forward, they might not want to go back to the route of having him there, and maybe they could save a little bit of money to address another issue. One of those issues being the power play, as it ranks 30th in the NHL in terms of power play percentage so far at this point of the season. So maybe they go out there and they say, we want to look for a power play specialist, or we want to go out and get a guy that can just help us, offensively, certain categories or wherever they want to go, getting somebody in their forward group that could help them out. And I think that isn't a terrible way to go. Just kind of one of those deals where, what are you going to get with it? Money, or are you going to address something else on this roster and spend it in another way? And there's other things that could change before this even happens. Looking at a guy like Jake Guentzel, he's been on the trade block recently, seen as an individual that could be an interesting piece for the deadline. He is also somebody that I think at the moment is injured, so maybe his value isn't as high. If they trade him, they'd like to be able to get a good return on him, and if not, he will be a free agent this summer. Either way, you could be looking at guys like Guentzel and Carter being gone, which, with Carter, I don't know how much people really are going to be pulling for him to come back, but at the same time too, just a situation where the forward group could be looking a little bit different next season, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So the Penguins, they have a lot of things that they can go and address, but again, I think with what we've seen there with their forward group, that could be something that is a little different, and maybe they spend their money there. I'd have to take a little bit of a deeper look at their bottom six and see if that's having an impact they want. I could imagine it being a top-heavy side where they have to carry a lot of the load offensively. But the reality is, too, that the Pens are a team that's not really been terrible by any stretch of the imagination. Yes, there's been some areas that they've been bad, but at the same time, I could see them maybe getting into the playoffs. But at the same time, too, there's not going to be a major overhaul. People thinking maybe at the start of this video that I was going to say, yeah, actually, they're going to trade Sid, they're going to trade Crosby, they're going to trade Letang. I don't really see that being the case because it's such an awkward situation to be in where you have some guys that have been so impactful for your franchise, and with how old they are, you don't really want to see them play for another team. I think it really just comes down to how much would you want to anger the fan base, and I don't think that anybody wants to be associated with trading away some of these guys. So they'll probably keep everything going how they have been and then try to retool and then get them back to the playoffs. But we will see. Anyway, I wish I could give you a little bit more of a deeper dive. I was going to take some notes for this, but things just got a little bit crazy, so I was just going to the top of my head with this video. Luckily, when you pay enough attention to the NHL regularly, you can kind of get an idea of what you want to talk about. And while I could probably definitely go deeper with this, just some ideas about some things we could be seeing with Pittsburgh in the summer and things like that, that I did want to just have a video out there about, where I think it's not a bad video by any means. It's not going to be one of those videos that you're probably like, oh, well, but still, I just hope to get out content to you guys, and if you enjoy it, you get to watch it. And I did this during lunch, so hopefully it doesn't seem too scrambled here. But anyway, what are your thoughts on the Penguins? Do you think there's going to be major changes? Do you think it's just going to be subtle changes? Do you think Ginsel gets traded? Do you think Carter walks? Do you think Sullivan is fired? Do you think they're going to make any changes to goaltending? Jari's had a pretty good year off the top of my head from what I can remember. But anyway, let me know all that stuff down below in the comments. Please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And you go the Falky, all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.